Welcome to the Halo Effect, Hospitality Stories with Ashley and Michael Donald. Hospitality isn't just our profession, it's our passion. With decades of experience and countless stories to share, we've navigated the highs and lows of this dynamic industry, not just as professionals, but as a husband and wife team tackling the challenges of business and life together. This podcast is your invitation to step behind the curtain of the hospitality world. We'll share real experiences, lessons learned, and the moments that have shaped our journey, offering inspiration and insights for anyone walking a similar path. Whether you're just starting out or have years under your belt, we're here to remind you that every challenge is an opportunity and every story has the power to inspire. Welcome back to the Halo Effect, Hospitality Stories with Ashley and Michael Donald. Today we are delighted to be joined by Paul Griffiths, Head of Commercial Growth and Strategic Partnerships at Guest Review and co-founder of Next Wave Hospitality. Paul has spent more than a decade working in hospitality technology, supporting hoteliers, clients and partners all around the world to better understand their guests, improve service and use technology in a way that genuinely supports the guest experience. Before joining Guest Review, Paul built extensive experience across the technology and hospitality tech space, including 8 years at Guestline, where he worked closely with Guest Review and developed a strong understanding of the product, the team, and the wider challenges facing modern hoteliers. Today we're going to talk about Paul's own journey into hospitality, the role of guest feedback and online reputation in shaping hotel performance, wider industry insight and the story behind Next Wave Hospitality, which began as a conversation in a pub and has grown into a platform for meaningful industry conversations, including the upcoming London event on the 19th of May. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Halo Effect.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Well, let's start with your own story. Can you tell us a little bit about how you first came to work in hospitality?
The origin story.
Yeah, I think my origin story is very similar to most people's. It was kind of accidentally falling into it at 16, trying to earn that pocket money on the side. So for me, it was, we've got a large exhibition centre not too far down from the family home. So silver service on a Saturday night for their events, kind of 1 day a week earning barely minimum wage. And then from there, I've always kind of been more in the kind of wet-led business in terms of pubs. My granddad actually was the chairman of the local football club. So there's many a photograph of me as a toddler sat on the bar there talking to customers.
Sitting in hops inside trophies.
Very, very barren, that trophy cabinet. Yeah, and then from there, like I said, I went to university. I actually studied medical biochemistry for 4.5 years. Wow. And all the way through my studies just worked, kind of either behind a bar and then worked my way up to bar managers. And I remember as I was approaching the end of that period that I kind of was like, yeah, I'm done with hospitality now. I'm going to go and live my life in a lab. And then life got very, very different very quickly and came back with open arms, realising that I just missed the people and that whole environment too much. And found my way back in with £30,000 worth of student debt in a degree that I never use. But wouldn't change it for the world.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's amazing how many conversations we have around those teenage experiences of working those part-time jobs, whether it's kind of serving tables or cleaning rooms or behind the bar, and actually how that kind of almost plants a seed that is just that sociable and lifestyle element. And I think it does just become kind of almost part of your lifestyle. And I think to be able to build a career from it with so many diverse opportunities within the industry is fantastic. So we're pleased that you found your way back to your belonging in the hospitality industry.
Yeah, I'll say, I think we spoke to John Stevenson from Zero Procure on a very early version of the Halo Effect before it even became a podcast, and he had worked in bars and learned. He says he learned pretty much everything he knows about people and how to communicate and sales and everything else about dealing with people and it's such an equalizer as well, because it doesn't matter who you are. If you're in the pub, everyone's kind of fairly even with different levels, but it's a great equalizer in that sense. And dealing with people in those situations, you find yourself really learning a lot about your own skills and how you can influence people in many ways.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think that's a great thing about hospitality, whether you get into the customer facing side of things, either on reception or working in the bars and restaurants, or, the back end as the cleaners and the housekeepers. It's just an industry that's full of so many transferable skills that are just vital to life. And I know many people have said it over and over again, but I do think that, knowing what I know now and the choices I've made through my career and things like that, I'd be urging any kind of person leaving school, college, to look at hospitality as a really key industry to get into early doors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely agree. And then, Paul, your role has often sort of lent into the sort of technology and the application of tech to support the industry. So how did you sort of find your way into that, I suppose, niche of hospitality?
I think it's my inner nerd, really. I've always been kind of good with technology, and right from an early age, I think understanding how technology can solve certain problems. And I think this is where, out of that university and that time spent in the lab, I think it's given me good stead in terms of the analytical side of things, being very focused on the smaller points. But obviously, specifically around hospitality technology, it really only becomes of a benefit to a hotelier when it makes a real difference, and it's helping, not hindering the whole process, whether that be from the guest side or from behind the scenes. And that's where my passion comes from, really trying to marry the two sides up to improve things as best we can.
It's not every day we talk about transferable skills from the lab into hospitality. That's brilliant. It goes both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's. I was thinking a lot about this recently. Is that whole kind of transferable skill bit? So you've got the people side, but once you can understand the people, then you can understand the challenges. And once you can understand the challenge, that's when you can start getting really creative with what a solution looks like to break down silos, break down the barriers. And when people come together to kind of achieve that goal, I think there's great things that can be done within the industry.
So then your first sort of like real step into that sort of technology role within hospitality, I suppose, was Guestline. So what did that kind of experience teach you about the sort of realities of the challenges that hoteliers face and the pressures that they're under?
And there's so many things. So like when I started with Guestline, I kind of started very, very basically just in the telemarketing department, cold calling the hotels to book appointments for people on the road. And then I kind of grew through the roles and worked through various different teams on that. And obviously you start talking to different levels of hoteliers. So in those early days, it was talking to the receptionists, and then understanding, obviously, kind of how overworked that reception desk is, dealing with check-ins, check-outs, with your arrivals, with complaints, with salespeople making 30 sales calls a day to a hotel just to sell them another bit of tech.
So you were left on hold a few times.
Many a time. If I think my career would have taken a completely different point if I'd have had £1 for every time, they're just in a meeting, can you call back tomorrow? was kind of mentioned to me. But so it's kind of understanding those pressures from the front desk, and then obviously as you kind of progress and you start talking to more general managers and front of house managers, you understand that it's similar kind of challenges, and obviously since that time of COVID, which seems it's still being talked about regularly, but we're just talking 6 years ago. Many departments have kind of merged. People have got multiple hats on these days, and time is the key thing that nobody has. And fundamentally, this is where my beliefs, where Guest Review's beliefs come into play, in that hoteliers should be freed from behind the desk, from behind computers and systems, and dealing with kind of challenges that technology can present, to spend more time with those guests, creating those memories, because that's what we're about. We're a people industry. We're people first. And as many systems as you can put in place, if you don't have clean bed sheets, if you don't have the right kind of welcoming atmosphere, it's ultimately never going to work long term for hotels. And that's the key thing, is just keeping it simple, keeping it basic, and doing what we do best.
Yeah, we often talk about the sort of those value-adding experiences, and oftentimes those are the ones where there is that direct guest to employee interaction, those kind of proper hospitality experiences, and anything we can do to have technology taking care of all the other stuff in the background that guests wouldn't necessarily pay you for, but certainly enables those experiences. Is that something that's really valuable to them? And also, you need to get your processes in the back of house absolutely bang on, because you don't always say, "Oh wow, my sheets were so clean." That's not the review you hear. You hear if they're dirty and the people are walking out. That's one of the first things people will walk out for. Yeah.
And then, Paul, in terms of, so you've mentioned around, the tech supporting the team so they can really, as you say, make those kind of moments of magic and memorable, and really sort of build that loyalty with the guests. But I suppose, throughout the work that you've done with Guestline and now with Guest Review, I suppose, what are the kind of key defining moments about where you've really seen how technology is helping hoteliers make better decisions and delivering better experiences?
I think it's there's not really kind of one key moment, I think, because everything leads on. Obviously, when I first got into the industry, the cloud was the new big buzzword of everything had to be cloud-based and get from behind servers and behind static PCs and be able to have access to data on the go on your phones and your smart devices. Yeah. And then just the natural evolution of that. And now with AI being the big buzzword, it's great. It can do a lot of the heavy lifting when it's implemented in the right way and with the right goal. When you focus on the end result of what are you trying to achieve, embracing technology that helps you get there is one of the best ways to do it. And I always say that you mentioned it just about, those kind of negative reviews that come in, the data that I see in day out is showing that guests are willing to spend more to travel. The demand is still there. People are willing to spend, but what is seen as the norms has completely shifted. So, originally it would have just been clean beds and a nice environment. Now it's things like your technology, it's your Wi-Fi, I had it recently. I traveled to Berlin for ITB earlier in the year. And I had a work call to take in the property I was staying at, and I had to reconnect 6 or 7 times during that one hour call, with a splash screen to log on and enter my room number and details again for the 3rd time. And so it's things like that you don't necessarily always see it in the positive reviews, but when that friction's inbuilt, it quickly can damage a reputation online. And I think it's one of the things that I'm passionate about, because, hospitality in general is one of the few industries that has such a very visible sounding board online. You don't have a TripAdvisor for your local supermarkets. You don't have one for mechanics and things like that. Yes, people can leave reviews on Google, but there's not a platform like a TripAdvisor out there which is so publicly available, which puts hoteliers under a lot of scrutiny, to keep those standards high.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great point. I think it's the reviews are out there, and even in addition to TripAdvisor, you've got the OTAs, you've got the social media reviews, you've got Google reviews, which is playing an ever more important part in the way that search engines are kind of serving your hotel up in various different searches. So I think it's just so important, as you say, to identify those moments of friction and look and act, because I would imagine that you'll perhaps not book that hotel again next time you're at ITV, right?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing. I mean, everything else about the property was superb. It's just for the type of business that I was on there and needed it. It was just one of those small pinch points that has that kind of big effect on guests. And if it was outlined a little bit more that that it isn't the best of Wi-Fi when you make the booking as a business, and it asked me, are you staying for leisure or business at the time of booking, and I put business in there. It may have had a different decision on that buying process, and I think that's the next big change that's coming. Is how people are booking trips. We've always looked at the OTAs and Booking.com as a source, and back to direct websites. But AI now, people do an itinerary planning, on ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it is. That I'm traveling to Barcelona for a week with 3 members of my party. One of them's in a wheelchair. I want recommendations for restaurants on the flat, etc., etc. It's all going to come from an AI engine shortly, and it's that's going to be where review data needs to filter in moving forward, so that people are getting that accurate view of those properties via a completely new channel that wasn't there 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So sticking with the theme of reviews, you're now Head of Commercial Growth and Partnerships at Guest Review. So for anyone that's maybe less familiar with what Guest Review does, can you explain a little bit about your role and about the platform?
Yeah, so Guest Review is the industry-leading kind of guest intelligence platform. So we've been around for over 10 years now, and in that time, the company's won many awards, including I think it's now 16 Hotel Tech Awards in total, and for the last 6 years straight in our categories. So it's a really good pedigree there. But I think one of the things we're also doing is obviously we manage kind of guest feedback in the sense of all of the traditional channels, that online reputation. We do kind of smart logic based surveys, and then we have the AI intelligence piece that we kind of brought to market as one of the first to do so. But it's that kind of blend, it's the AI but with the pedigree, so we kind of fully understand what hotels are looking for in terms of that data. My role here, obviously, since I joined kind of around 3 years ago now, was to kind of just help, improve the sales, which we're doing really well in. We've broken into new markets, signed new resellers kind of globally, and just keep that engine moving. But we're blessed with a great team here, and that's one of the kind of key differentiators really for Guest Review is time and time again that our support team are winning awards, and because we put people first. It's people first, technology second.
Brilliant, which is just so aligned, as you mentioned right at the start, that we are in the people business after all, and the technology is there as a support. So with the review of guest feedback, online reputation management, why are these areas so important to commercial performance, not just your satisfaction scores?
So I think there's many reasons for it really. So I mean, one, you have to look at the role that a review plays, because for a long time in the industry, it's seen as that afterthought. It's paying lip service to those guests, if there's been a complaint once they've stayed. But actually, when you look at that whole buying cycle for the guests, the first thing they'll do is go to TripAdvisor and say, right, I'm looking for a hotel in London, Paris, wherever it may be. And then you'll get your list of your top 10, that populate there. And then you start looking at those reviews. And the way that people look at reviews is changed over the years. But typically, it's your first kind of 2 to 3 pages of TripAdvisors where they look. Once they've seen that kind of reaction, and there's a lot of stats to back this up. So, for example, it's something like 32% of guests will actually look at other accommodation if they can see that your reviews are going unanswered on TripAdvisor.
Right.
So potentially you can lose 1 in 3 guests just by not responding to your reviews. Now, when I talk to hoteliers, the key thing of that is time. Not being able to sit down and answer, 30, 40, 50 reviews a day. But it really is vital that hotels start looking into that. And that's why we developed the kind of AI to help with the management responses, to give those customized templates as a real starting point, which can shave, 5 to 6 minutes off a review, just in thinking power and getting past that. Then when you look at the rest of the cycle, obviously once they've looked at the reviews, then you've got kind of some of the cool integrations that we do with booking engines where where you're booking online, you're looking for an upgrade, and then you see the little spinning wheel of death as it might only be a minute, but it's looking for rates and availability. The ability to pop in a recent 5-star review into that process to go, to kind of reaffirm that you're buying quality, you're going to have a great experience, is great. So you can factor that in there. Then you've got the ability with in-stay, which is something that isn't talked about a lot. So, we're able to put surveys behind QR codes on the TV screens in the rooms. I've even got one site that uses our short links on an NFC tag. So they've got they've got wireless charging for their phone. So you drop it down, they lift the phone up in the morning, they greet it with a little 3 survey question of, did you sleep okay? Do you need the mini bar restocking? Is there anything else we can do to make your stay more enjoyable? So having that kind of on the go feedback is more important, because 9 times out of 10 you only get the feedback on checkout that there was something wrong, and then it's too late to do anything with it.
What's the engagement with that kind of in stay? Because sometimes I'm on a stay where everything's going fine. I don't really maybe want to be bothered. I've nothing to necessarily share that I'm happy or not happy with. I guess if something's going wrong, obviously I want an opportunity to to engage with someone. But how much do guests sort of interact with the sort of in-stay, do you find?
I think it's growing all the time. Yeah, it has changed. I mean, you look like now, I've just booked with a hotel recently, and they've got a full guest messaging suite. So, but from the moment you check in, you get a little WhatsApp, going, is everything okay with your room? And you can choose to ignore it, or just send back, yep, everything's fine. So I think hotels are adopting this kind of in-stay proactive on-the-go communication with guests, and it's all about getting the right message at the right time to those guests. You've got smart kind of CRM solutions out there that are aiding this. You've got the guest messaging platforms. There's a lot of technology that's come along in that to aid that adoption. It's one of those things that, as more and more hotels see the benefits of it, I think the adoption rate is going to be higher, and then it's going to become a new norm for guests. So I can only, the trend I see is that that's only going to keep on increasing until we find that it hits that saturation point. And I
guess being able to own that feedback yourself and keep it internal, so you can action things and do something about it, is a lot better than suddenly a review. Someone's checked in, they've put a review on Google straight away, that you then have no sort of control over and is out in public.
You can sort of solve the problem while the guest is there. And I'm sure there's a stat that when a guest has had an issue and it's been resolved really well on property, that actually they're much more loyal than if they just didn't have an issue at all and they sort of kind of flew a bit under the radar. So they really appreciate that kind of problem resolution from the team.
Harry Fielder has a thing about seamless service, and he's like, well, sometimes those little points of friction are the moments where you can really wow someone. But your internet dropping out 6 times in one call in an hour is not that example. Maybe once and someone fixes it and it's fixed, works. But if it's not working at all, then it's not really going to work.
Yeah, and I think just the final point on that as well is, if you look at, like we've talked a lot about kind of the in-stay benefits, in terms of, keeping that guest loyal and rebooking. But, there's a couple of studies out there, and it's one, I'm always loath to use it because it's kind of 5 or 6 years old now, but it's the one that everybody seems to go back to time and time again. And that is that, kind of a 1% increase in your online reputation scores can add up to 1.4, I think it's 1.42%. In RevPAR, about a 0.5% increase in occupancy, and 0.89 percentage increase in your ADRs. But the one that's really key for me, and the one that we see with the technology, certainly in guest review, that helps hoteliers, is that a 1 point increase on the 5-point scale. So, going from a 4 to a 5 on TripAdvisor, or 3.5 to 4.5, means that a hotel can actually increase their prices by 11.2%.
Wow.
Whilst maintaining occupancy and market share. So it just shows how important
really
decent reputation online really is to the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. And I always remember, reviews would come in and there'd be kind of an emotional reaction as a in operations as a hotelier. Whoa, I've got a 1-star review there, and then the 5-star review is like, oh great, another 5-star. But the 1-star review, I'd immediately feel like I want to start looking into it and say, well, that's not right, and my thing was always, the customer's truth is the truth. As far as you're concerned, it is the truth. But do you think there's still you talk about that commercial impact that it can have, but do you still find that there's a gap between the operationals, the emotional part of it, the marketing, that commercial revenue side of things, and reputation management in hotels? And does this sort of technology help bring this together a little bit more and kind of focus everyone on one goal?
I think that's the key thing. Is it's almost like an educational piece that we need to do, and I think this is what there's a number of us in the industry that are pushing this kind of thinking, is that technology is great, but when it's still used in silos, it loses a lot of its impetus. So we see it, operations managers are looking at the reviews because they want to know exactly what's gone wrong, how can they improve the service. And I'll speak to hoteliers and their marketing teams haven't logged in. And you're like, okay, so why is that? Because, with the way that AI can pick apart that data straight away, you could have 20, 30 sound bites a day that is ready to go content for whether it's, via a TikTok campaign or Instagram or your website, whatever it may be. There's so much content there that's really great for a marketing team that's just getting overlooked time and time again. I mean, I was quite lucky that I was on, it's actually where I met Ashley up in Edinburgh at an event recently. I say recently, it's like about 10 weeks ago now, but it feels like it was yesterday. But we were working with the guys at Huckleberry. So as part of our presentations, I was presenting kind of the state of the industry for Edinburgh based on review data. And they kind of took our data that we had from the OTAs, the online sources, and were able to create some really hard-hitting and impactful campaigns for some of the hotels in the room kind of anonymously that tackled, some of the negative reviews head on, but also changed it into a positive thing. So, there's a lot of great venues up in Edinburgh, kind of listed buildings, but noise in certain areas of the systems can be a problem. And, changing that from being a negative of noise to a campaign centered around being in the lively heartbeat of the city was just a great way to actually turn that perceived negative into a major advantage. And, it was kind of well received in the room. So things like that, I think, are moving ahead. And if the teams at hotel levels are willing to embrace the technology and see what it can do across the board, it's only going to go from strength to strength.
Yeah, I love that example, and that really stayed with me as well. I thought that was a fantastic use of data, and I know, since we set up Halo, coming up to 7 years ago, so Mike's experience is very much in that operations, guest-facing, service culture, and my background's very much marketing and PR, and I think, before we'd sort of set up Halo, I think we both felt that we worked in quite different disciplines, and we each had our, skill set, and that was kind of what we did in hospitality. That was our career path. And then when we set up Halo, I think that bridging of, almost the brand promise that's been communicated and marketed to your guests, and then that then sort of delivery and really sort of acting on guest feedback and tweaking it. But I just love that specific example that you use, that you're taking those specific quotes from your actual guests who have experienced your hotel and turning it into a campaign. And I think there's so many opportunities for that. And I really like that example that actually marketing and comms do need to be more across those reviews and looking at ways that they can really hyper personalize campaigns. I think that was just such a great example.
Yeah, I mean, every hotel has your entry-level rooms, right? And they're not the ones that make it onto the homepage of the website. And if you're trying to market those, I mean, you see a lot of people talking about their cozy rooms and things like that don't have a view. But the way they market that is so important. And maybe you're at ground level, and it's the hustle and bustle, and you're a bit more exposed to that. I think that was a really great example.
Great. And then just, I suppose, more widely, Paul, from the work you do in sort of hospitality tech and all of this intelligence and the partnerships that you've formed with hoteliers, what do you think hoteliers are most focused on right now, or potentially should be focused on right now?
I think it varies. I mean, hoteliers are under a lot of pressure right now, especially, if we look at just the UK market, I don't want to go into politics too much, but right now we're in a very uncertain time in the UK, and hospitality has been the industry that's been hit. And, we show time and time again that we're resilient. We came out of COVID and we're back to those kind of, the pre-pandemic levels with occupancy and booking rates and et cetera, et cetera. But, the rise in VAT, the rise in minimum wage, is all taking a massive hit on those staff. So it's a very pressured environment once again, for different reasons. And I don't think we'll ever get away from that. So I think at the moment there's a lot of talk. I speak to a lot of hoteliers that are looking at that tech stack right now with investment in terms of they realize that more can be done with that. And I think that's the challenge. And look, if anything, it's a bigger challenge for tech vendors to step up to the plate and have those honest conversations with hoteliers about exactly what needs to be solved and how best to do it. Because, there's not a one-stop solution that will fit every single hotel. Everyone is unique. Everyone has its own quirks and charms. And you need to be able to understand that to really help the hotelier. So I think that's the biggest one right now, and that's what I'm hearing. Staffing is still a challenge, people being overworked, doing multiple jobs. So I think where I'm seeing is a lot of technology being adopted where it can automate the mundane is the phrase that I kind of like. A lot of this is that day-to-day, that back-end stuff. And I see it with some of the partners, you know, where you're looking at smart rotary systems that can look at your reservations, your EPOS solutions to look how many covers you've got booked in, that can instantly just populate, okay, well, you're going to need this many staff on and you're going to need this much cover, and et cetera, et cetera. And seeing things like that coming out now, you know, is really cool. I think there's a lot of development. You know, I know what our development roadmap looks like, and the features that are coming, and the demands for the industry is it's incredible. It's kind of like, you know, I can kind of say tongue in cheek, I'm kind of glad I'm out of the front line of hospitality, because you know, I see it. You know, I go to hotels, I chat with the staff, I can see the frustrations on a daily basis, but they never lose their smile. They never let the guests know. And I think the best analogy for this one I think about off the cuff is it's either the swan or the iceberg. Yeah. Is that, you know, you see the swan on the lake looking majestic and it's all like kind of serene. But what you don't see is that below the kind of waterline, those legs paddling at 100 miles an hour just to even stay in place, not to move forward, but just to stay exactly where you are. And I think that's really the biggest focus at the moment, I would say.
Yeah. And so you mentioned about, and obviously living and breathing what you do, speaking to hoteliers, speaking to, you know, those very guest facing departments, and taking that feedback and taking that to help inform the technology roadmap for guest review. So I suppose what can we look forward to, and what are some of the sort of optimistic things we can look forward to around guest reviews roadmap, and generally the future of how technology can support the industry?
I think, like I say, our roadmap is stacked. You know, Sam, who's our head of development, you know, I've had so many conversations with him recently, and the roadmap is stacked. Where I think it's going is we're in kind of one of the, I'm not going to say unique position, but, you know, as being around for as long as we have in 10 years, you know, we've got a lot of legacy systems in place, you know, in the back end that customers never see. So for the first thing we're doing, obviously, is kind of re-engineering the platform from the ground up in the back end, which no one will see, but makes a massive difference. You know, this year alone, we've already changed a number of things, like the way that we can deliver emails quicker, faster, with different kind of streams for different jobs and bits and pieces like that. And then we start looking at like our reporting. So we launched AI. We were one of the first to add in AI in terms of the analytics side of things. We've got AI management responses, which is why we deliberately focus on two areas that we're going to make the most difference to our hotelier. So the one provides time in terms of responding to those guests. Great. And then the other area was kind of like saving a hotelier having to intimately read through, you know, multiple reviews a day to spot those trends, to facilitate things. So to have those snapshots is really useful. I think, you know, when you look at the pace that technology is going, things are going to evolve quite quickly. You know, like legacy ways of reporting, you know, when you have your kind of, you know, even from a PMS, you know, your arrivals reports, your from guest reviews specifically, you know, you've got like the comprehensive reports, your NPS score reports, and a whole wealth of them in the system. But people are going to want that in a more accessible on-the-go format with AI, you know, kind of like almost, you know, the way I see it is almost like a chat bot. You know, you just ask it the question and there's your report on the go. So you don't have to go and pull the data. It's just going to be there. So I think that's the challenge for the development team, is to make that happen, because, you know, AI sitting on top of a platform is good. It can give you an entry-level kind of insight into things. But once it's fully embedded throughout the entire system, that's when you're going to see the best gains out of it. So that's part of what we're doing. You know, we've always had the three key areas that we focus on: the pre-stay, the in-stay, the post-stay. There's going to be coming, you know, there's a lot of plans for the pre-stay elements of this. And I can't share too much because obviously you know what a roadmap's like. It's going to chop and change, you know, as we prioritize things. But I think the key thing though is how you go about it. You know, when we launched our AI, having those customer forums, you know, we tested it with a large sample of our clients, had that feedback to tweak and change it, because ultimately, you know, it has to benefit the people at the end of it, you know, those hoteliers. It has to make a difference there. Otherwise, it's development for vanity's sake.
It sounds really exciting, and certainly something to be really optimistic about. And I think the important thing is that we get that message out there, that all these, we have some great stuff coming. The roadmap is there. We have amazing tools that are built just for you. And I guess that kind of leads us quite nicely into Next Wave Hospitality. I mean, I like to think that a podcast helps too, to kind of let people know. But Next Wave Hospitality, we were recently joined by Alessandra Leone on a previous episode, and you're obviously one of the co-founders of Next Wave Hospitality, which we're also excited to be excited to be a part of too. Can you take us back to the beginning? Let us know how it came about, the origin story of Next Wave Hospitality. I
think typically, as so many brainchilds kind of form, it was a conversation in a pub after another industry event. And, I'm privileged in my role, that I get to travel a lot to see these industry events and see what people are saying on the ground. But there's a general consensus, I think, at the moment that there's so many opportunities to sponsor an event or be part of an event, and then it turns into 13 or 14 different sales pitches, one after another to hotelier, and the kind of real conversations get lost. Yeah. So when we were talking about it, we kind of wanted to put on an event in the industry that was those honest conversations, no sugarcoating anything, just a real kind of, okay, so tell us what you're experiencing. This is what we know. We're going to get the experts in to tell you what we're seeing. Does it actually stack up from the eyes of a front desk, a receptionist or the GM or the finance manager, or whatever it is, and bring everybody into that room to have those conversations, the discussion points, be very interactive, with no selling involved, and obviously we can't do events like Next Wave without like our great sponsors that we have, on the event. But the core content is going to be very much that kind of open form. I think it's more panel led than ever this time, and Next Wave kind of came about on the back of a couple of successful events with the focus group, Alessandra, Hosper, Ryan Haynes. There's so many names that we can mention from the original kind of testing environment for this. But what we saw was the appetite. I mean, we started promoting this a couple of weeks ago, and we've already kind of got something like a 95% booking rate already on the event, and the people are emailing us saying, look, we can't be part of this, when's the next one, because we really want to be part of it. So it's certainly quite humbling to know that kind of frank discussion we all had in the pub together has led to a new way of doing things, I think. I'm really excited to be there and hosting it on the day.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. And I attended one of the events that you mentioned. It was the Edinburgh event, and I know you did an event in Manchester. And it's just great to see that momentum continue and relatively quick turnaround and putting together websites and LinkedIn pages and to get a 95% booking rate. Is just fantastic. So likewise, I'm really looking forward to all of those different conversations throughout the day. We've got a real mix of economic insight, industry insight, honest conversations, and I think it'll be really excited to see what comes. So from those initial conversations of having in the pub, obviously this event is hopefully one of many. What would your kind of aspirations or vision be for Next Wave Hospitality in a sort of more of a longer term phase?
I think it's going to be keeping those conversations fresh and honest. I've been at events where we're still talking about the same things that we have done for 5 years in the industry, where everybody's talking about, the effects of the pandemic and COVID and the recovery rates, or the same set of data that everybody looks at, time and time again, and nothing really changes. You could copy and paste and lift it from one event to the next and this year to that year. So I think keeping up, and I think that's one of the things that's been refreshing is, when you look at the people on the panels, the hoteliers that have put their names to different panels, and that's the nice thing with a lot of what we're doing here is it's not just vendors going to be on stage talking about why their solutions are the best thing. Is every one of them has got a hotelier as part of that discussion, because that's what keeps it all together. That is the glue in what we're trying to do here, that it is by hoteliers and everybody. I think that certainly the co-founders and the kind of really instrumental people behind the scenes have all been in a hotelier or in a bar manager or whatever, that on the ground kind of positioning. So we understand the challenges as well. And, they may have changed since we were in those shoes, but understanding it and then being able to drive that change, work with those partners, work with people to drive change in the industry to help us evolve quicker and faster and better, I think can only be good for everybody in the long run.
Yeah, I love that. And as you say, that it's that sort of practical takeaway and working collectively to drive change. I think that's a really great message. So we, as we're recording this, it will be just before the event. So for anyone who is free on the 19th of May, we'll put all of the details in the show notes and in the various social posts. So yeah, do hope you can join us at this or one of the future events. And then just really as a kind of wrap up, Paul, we mentioned at the very beginning about how hospitality has been such an important part of all of our early careers. But what advice would you give to someone who is maybe early in their hospitality career and just trying to find their way?
I think it's difficult. What I would always say is, look, just embrace it as much as you can, because the culture, the people that I've seen, I've seen people have rapid kind of growth in this industry. Those ones that are willing to be like a sponge, absorb the knowledge, understand what it is we're trying to do in the industry is always a key thing. There are going to be difficult days. I remember them well, doing 12-hour bar shifts and thinking, and I remember when I was at university, I put a LinkedIn post about this. I remember saying, I'm done with it now. I'm tired. I was kind of a little jaded in them early days. Got out of it, spent a couple of years in the wilderness, stumbling around and doing tech for other companies. I worked for Epsom for a while in their technical department. But then you realize it's the people that make the industry. And we have so many phenomenal people. And there's so many people now that I get to call my peers that, when I joined the industry, you kind of looked up to them and that they were the ones on panels and the ones that were talking and trying to lead the charge. And now I get to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. So the opportunities are there. You just got to want to grab it with both hands and just take it, because it's an industry that rewards.
Yeah, it really does. And I think that's a lovely point about the community. And it is such a supportive community. And I've always found throughout my career, people have been so generous to offer almost like mentorship in formal and informal coaching. And, we're all very supportive. And I think, the resilience that you talked about earlier, I think we're all, you can just pick up the phone and say, hey, I've got a bit of a problem. Can I chat through this, through with you? And I think everyone's just so generous with their time to support their peers in the industry to help better the industry as a whole. So I'm really looking forward to having a lot of these conversations at Next Wave next week. But Paul, thank you so much for joining us. It's been so great to hear your story of how you got into hospitality, what Guest Review does, and just what we can look forward to in terms of technology and that support for the industry. So really looking forward to seeing you at Next Wave next week. And we'll share all of the links to your LinkedIn, Paul. So if people would like to get in touch and find out a little bit more about Guest Review, we'll put all of the Next Wave hospitality information on there. And information around Guest Review. You also offer free demos as well, which you kindly did one for us, which was fascinating. So I really encourage people to connect with you and get in touch. But thank you so much for your time, Paul. It's been great to have you.
Not a problem. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Halo Effect, Hospitality Stories with Ashley and Michael Donald. We hope today's episode has offered some insights and encouragement to anyone navigating the world of hospitality or entrepreneurship. We'd love to hear from you. If you have a question, want to suggest a topic, or interested in just joining us as a guest, you'll find our contact details in the show notes. Don't forget to follow, like, or subscribe to The Halo Effect on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Until next time, thank you, and we can't wait to welcome you back for more stories and inspiration.